Okay, we're back. Let's pick up from where we left off. In this video, we're going to be creating a domain group, and we're going to go through and talk about the different types of groups within Active Directory. And we're going to join a computer to the domain and actually see what that process looks like. All right, with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into the environment. So where we left off last time, we created our accounting OU, and within the OU, we created a user, and we have this test lab user here. And so now what we need to do is we need to create a group. Well, why do we need a group? The reason for groups is that when you have multiple objects within an environment, you don't want to add a user. Let's say we had 10 users within this accounting group. We wouldn't want to add all 10 of the users one at a time to a particular object or a folder for that matter. So if they all needed to access this one folder called data needed, for an example, we wouldn't want to add each user one at a time. We'd like to put them in a group. Also, it saves on the cleanup if a user, one out of the 10 users here leaves the organization. We just have to remove the user from here, not go find all of the folders that they had access to, and remove them from that location. Okay, so within here, we're going to go ahead and create a new OU and talk about what we're seeing here. New group, I think I said OU. So from within here, we see that we have our group that we're going to be creating, and we have the different type of group scopes. So you have a domain local, you have a security, and this is the group type, the security type or distribution. Security is going to be what you're going to be applying permissions to. Distribution is going to be for email. So like it says, a distribution group. So if you have folks that you want to email, Exchange really takes advantage of this, not so much as within this particular Windows environment, but that's going to be by email server. So that will take advantage of this particular group type. So we would add all the users to this. They would then get an email address applied to it. For an example, would be sales@testlab.local or testlab.com. Then the emails will actually go to there and be distributed to the users in this group. So in this case here, we're creating a security group, and we're going to make it a global group. A global group, the reason, well, let me explain those. The global group and a universal group. Universal group you're usually going to use whenever you're talking between two different domains or two different domains in a forest. So if we had Target and Walmart, for an example, needing to be in the same group and access resources. So if both domains needed to access resources on a particular file server, and this was the name of the file here, you would create a universal group, and then you would actually put the domain, these global groups inside of that universal group from both locations, and then both would have access to this resource, is the way that that works. I'll actually give an example of that. Jump back over here to our slide real quick. We'll just actually talk through these really quick. So we have our local group. Our local group is going to be where on the local computer, so the right's on a particular local computer, and you can see here in the middle, we're actually kind of giving a description of what each one of these actually do and what they are. So if we look at a domain local group, and we talk about normally this will help whenever you're in between forests, like it's talking about here, like a universal group, and we can put the accounts from the domain that we're currently in into a domain local group, and then place that also inside of a domain global group, and then from a global group place that inside of a universal group. Again, we're mainly just trying to save on the cleanup is what we're looking to do, is the main things that we're looking to do there. So the way that we would take advantage of that would be in a situation like this, for an example. So we have a two-way trust between two organizations. So we've got this new organization that's trying to come into and wants to be part of our organization here. So now this one would be, we have this organization here called newtestlab.local, and they need to access resources over here on the testlab.local. So they've got their sales user one here. they're part of a global group in this group over here, but they need to have access to this file server over here to access resources on it. And this particular folder here is called sales. So we've got this domain local group here called sales, and then we've got a global group here. We would then take this particular group here and place it into this group here, which is like group nesting. And so both of these groups now are inside this local group that can access items on this file server. Another example would be a little more broader example would be when we would actually take advantage of a universal group. So we've got a sales global group here that we're going to place into this universal group. And we've got the sales domain local over here that we're going to then place into this universal group. And this on this particular domain over here, both the test lab and this test lab over here would have access to these resources here. Same goes for over here. So these folks over here in the test lab.local would have access to the new test lab.local on these resources over here to the pricing item here. So that's when you would actually utilize the radio boxes into that. Otherwise, you can't have a domain local here and a domain local here trying to access the same folder because both do not recognize each other. So use a universal group to nest the two inside of it and then give permissions to both assets is normally how that works. All right, so back over here, we're going to go ahead and create our new group, and we're going to call this accounting. So we got this one, it's called accounting staff, and it's going to by default just be a global group, and we're going to go ahead and say okay here. So now we have this accounting staff group here, and we're going to go ahead and right click on this, and we're going to go ahead and go to properties of this. And currently right now we have no members. It's not managed by anyone. So we can go ahead and add some group members to it. And we can also change this role on the fly, but we cannot make it a domain local. We can't go backwards. We can go from a domain local and go up, but we cannot go backwards. So from here, we'll go ahead and add some members to it. I'm gonna add our one user that we have here. So you can see here, our user has been added to this group here. Go ahead and say apply here. This particular group is not a member of anything else. So again, if this was nested inside of another group, like another universal group, then it would actually show up here. So as far as managed by, we talked about this before when we were going through the tabs of the particular user who actually manages this. So if there was a accounting user here and they were the manager, then we would actually say that this particular manager manages this group here. So this actually is more about updating memberships and things like that. So right here, we can check a check mark here to let this person update this membership group. And it goes a little further because from within Outlook, they won't actually have to ask a admin for access to update this. If you check this check mark, that gives this particular manager here access to add the people that they want to this group. This is normally used for when you're talking about distribution groups, not so much as a security group. That's just when otherwise, if it was a distribution group, at that point within their Outlook, they can add members to there. But with it being a security group, they have to come back to the admins and say, hey, can you add Susie to this group? Okay, so we'll go ahead and say okay here. So now we're going to go over to our folder here, and this happens to just be on this domain controller, but we can do it on another server. The process is still the same. So we're going to right click this folder. We're going to go to properties. We're going to go to the security tab. And as you can see right now, it has the default items in this folder here. So we can go ahead and click edit. And we'll also going to go through the advanced features as well. And so for here, we're going to go ahead and click on add. So now I just typed in just the accounting first couple of characters of it so that we could come in here and actually see. So you can see the group here is accounting staff. So we're going to go ahead and say okay here. So now when we look at the accounting staff here, we click on that, we can see the permissions that are being applied to them on this particular folder. So this says they have read and write and execute list folder content. They can read the folder. So when they go to access this folder on the network, here are the things they would actually be able to do with it. So they don't have modify, so they can't delete the folder, they can't rename it or things of that nature. They can only read and execute. So they can run applications from the folder, they can read items within the folder, but they can't modify it. Full control means they can actually delete it, do whatever they want to do with it. They can hide the folder if they wanted to. So if we, we're gonna go ahead and say apply here. Say okay here. We're going to go back out here to the advanced tab here. And I want to talk through these items as well. So when we look at the permissions here, here are our effective permissions here. So we can see here we have access is going to be read and execute. And we can go through and we can add more people from this window here, not just from this one out behind here. When we talk about the auditing portion of it, auditing really comes down to if we want to see if someone's accessing this folder. Let's say we have a rogue user and we have this folder as confidential items, and we want to actually know if this user is accessing it. We'll go in here and we'll add this user in, and we'll select principal, and we'll say lab, just for an example. So we have this user in here, and we want to see what's actually going to happen whenever they access it. So we can say that they're going to try to access this folder. We're going to get these particular things here. If they try to read the folder, they try to read and execute, things of that nature. But if we're only auditing to see if they try to read it or just try to access it, then we'll just select read, and then we'll look inside of the Windows event log, and then that'll tell us that this user tried to access this folder. Okay, and if we go out to to the effective access, then what this is actually going to tell us is it's kind of like modeling what's actually going to happen when you give someone access to this particular folder. So we can select the user here, and if someone says, well, I need to give this person access to this folder, but I don't want them to be able to do deleting and things of that nature. What you can do is you can come out here and select the user here on that particular folder, add the user into here. What group are they a part of? Let's say that they have this particular user happens to be part of 5 different groups. And then from within there, you can then come into here and add the group into here. Let's just say it's accounting. So we can see that we have the accounting staff group here, one user here, and now we can go ahead and click on the view. So then this is actually going to tell us, kind of model it for us and tell us what their permissions are going to be here. So there you go. And so we already know the reason why we have like full control and those things there is because this user here that we selected actually is a domain admin. So if you remember from earlier, if we go back and look at this user here and we look at the members of tab, and we look here, we can see here that this user is a domain admin. So even though we added the accounting group to the folder, I'm gonna say cancel here. So we added the accounting group folder people here. So this group here, but the particular user here, the lab user here, even though he's a member of this group here, he's also a domain admin. So it supersedes that and says, well, the administrators group here also has full control, which is why when we went and modeled that, it showed that this person had more control than what this group has. So other users within here. So if we would have selected like Susie, who was a normal user here that wasn't a part of the administrators group, then they would have gotten the permissions that were listed here. But because this particular user here is part of here, which means that this happens a lot within organizations, and when folks add someone in, this person ends up having more permissions on a folder than what they should, is because they're part of another group that has more privileges on the rights of this folder. So that's how that actually happens. All right. So I hope that's been helpful and informative, and I'd just like to thank you for viewing. And if you have any questions, please leave some comments, and we'll definitely answer those. Thank you.